On September 15th, 1959, there was a commotion at Andrews Air Force Base near Washington. An official delegation from the USSR was expected, but while President Eisenhower was waiting for Khrushchev's arrival, aviation enthusiasts were waiting for his plane. The sky over America was filled with a roar from a massive, long-range turboprop airliner, a symbol of Soviet aviation. Hello, this is Zulu Zulu, and today, decades after that legendary flight, we meet this giant once again. Welcome to the Tupolev Tu-114. The history of this aircraft, which literally and figuratively made so much noise, began in the early 1950s. This was a period when aviation was undergoing a revolution. Gas turbine engines expanded the capabilities of aircraft, allowing them to take on long-distance routes across continents and oceans. The aviation leaders of that time had different needs, but the goals were similar. The de Havilland Comet was already flying in the UK, while large Boeing 707 and Douglas DC-8 jet airliners were created in the USA. And in the USSR, planes like the IL-18 and Tu-104 were conquering the skies. However, Soviet planes had limitations in range. To scale up and reach longer routes, a much larger transport aircraft was needed. In 1955, when smaller planes were still in the testing phase, the government issued a task to create a large and spacious passenger aircraft capable of non-stop flights over distances that were huge for that time. This was an ambitious and extremely difficult task. The task was assigned to the design bureau of Andrei Tupolev, an expert in heavy and long-range aircraft. At first, the designers considered creating a completely new aircraft. But this idea was quickly discarded. Creating a new plane from scratch would require significant costs and many years of work. Instead, they decided to use the platform of the Tu-295 bomber, which first flew in 1952 and had been actively tested for several years. It was a large aircraft with impressive dimensions and range. However, converting a bomber into a passenger plane was not an easy solution. In the end, the engineers decided to keep many parts of the Tu-295 design, but with profound changes to turn it into a full-fledged civilian transport aircraft. This decision had both advantages and disadvantages, which we will explore further in the next section. Notably, despite many challenges, the development of the Tu-114 progressed rapidly. Solutions were quickly implemented, and resources were focused on developing new technologies. Additionally, the Tu-114 project was one of the first when the Design Bureau worked closely with Aeroflot, their main customer, from the early stages, making the work more efficient. The rapid development was supported by strong leadership from the country, and notably Nikita Khrushchev was very eager to see this plane completed as soon as possible. The results didn't take long, and the Tu-114 prototype reached the stage of its first flight test by 1957. One of the controversial points was its power plant. The Tu-114 became the world's largest passenger turboprop aircraft and is still considered a giant. But why would they choose a turboprop at the dawn of the jet era? The answer is not that the engineers were too lazy to make a jet aircraft, but rather that at the time, jet engines weren't powerful enough and were inefficient with fuel. The development of jet engines became more effective in later years, but in the 1950s, turboprops were still a more reasonable choice. The NK-12 engine with a 15,000 horsepower and coaxial contra-rotating propellers was chosen, though it had the downside of being extremely noisy, especially when the propeller tips began to break the sound barrier. However, the NK-12 was powerful, reliable, and economical, which was crucial for a large transport aircraft. The Tu-114 could take off with one engine out and continue flying for some time with two engines down. Additionally, while being inferior to jet engines in speed, turboprops perform better at lower speeds, providing a bonus to takeoff and landing performance. The Tu-114 is a large and heavy aircraft, with a maximum takeoff weight of 179 tons, and its airfield requirements were quite high. However, if it were a jet, very few runways worldwide could accommodate it. The aircraft's cruising speed reached 475 km per hour, with a range of up to 9,000 km, making it more than sufficient for long-haul flights. This aircraft served for many years and became a symbol of Soviet aviation, demonstrating the remarkable technological progress of that time. In the mid-1960s, the Tu-114 began operating internationally, with flights to Cuba amid the Cuban Missile Crisis. The flight from Moscow to Havana was an adventurous journey, but this aircraft proved its reliability by performing a direct flight over the Arctic and the Atlantic Ocean. Despite only around 33 Tu-114 aircraft being produced, it left a deep mark on the aviation industry and is still displayed in aviation museums today. The journey of the Tu-114 continues to be a significant chapter in aviation history, marked by its giant size and impressive design and capabilities. In addition to commercial flights, the Tu-114 participated in many international air shows, especially at events like the Paris Air Show and the International Exhibition in New York. These flights not only showcased its long-distance capabilities, but also demonstrated the technological prowess of the USSR, solidifying their presence in global aviation. An interesting aspect of the Tu-114 is that it wasn't just used for civilian flights, but also played a role in transporting important political delegations, including Khrushchev's flight to the United States. This marked a significant step in the use of long-range passenger aircraft for diplomatic purposes, further establishing the USSR's influence on the global stage. With the advent of jet engines and newer, more efficient airliners like the Boeing 747 in the 1970s, the Tu-114 quickly became a relic of the past. The advancements in aviation technology outpaced the turboprop design, making it obsolete despite its power and reliability at the time. While the operational life of this aircraft was short, its legacy in Soviet aviation is invaluable. It was not just a mode of transport, but also a symbol of the USSR's technological development and resilience during difficult times. The Tu-114 remains a part of aviation history, with some of its models preserved in museums for future generations to admire and learn from. Thank you for following the story of the Tu-114. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to not miss any interesting upcoming videos.